following podcast is for informational purposes only. The contents of this podcast do not constitute tax, legal, or investment advice. Take responsibility for your own decisions, consult with the proper professionals, and do your own research.
And back in the DeFi summer, I was also in touch with a lot of developers, and they were really explaining me what this could potentially enable them to do. And I started to take a deeper dive in the technology, and that's how I fell in love with it. And I wanted to bring value to this project and see how I can get involved in its success.
Welcome to the GRTiQ podcast. Today I'm speaking with Sam, co-founder of GRTiQ, the world's leading source of crypto news in the French language, and Node Guardians, a recently launched project that offers several creative solutions for both developers and protocols. During our discussion, Sam shares his personal experience of how he moved from pre-med to a career in crypto. He also talks about the unique experience of building GRTiQ and growing it from 6 people to millions of monthly visitors and subscribers. I also ask Sam about his newest project, Node Guardians, his opinions of Web3, and how he came to know about the graph and the important role it plays in Web3. As always, I started the discussion by asking Sam about his educational background.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Really humbled. It's a great pleasure to be on the GRTiQ podcast. Really amazing what you guys have built. And speaking of backgrounds, it's not going to be that amazing. So to make it very short, I'm a med school dropout. That's it. But I took a strong interest during my spare hours in Austrian School of Economics, economy in general. I had this side business, flipping rare sneakers and also items and video games using add-to-cart bots to snipe them before the others and trying to see how value could be made. I was trying to fiddle around with everything. I was also taking interest in applied science in general, computer science and everything. So a little bit of everything. Yeah, but I'm a med school dropout. That's my background.
Well, Sam, you're not the first guest that's joined me who dropped out of medical school to pursue a career in technology and crypto. But you are the first to mention this buying and selling of unique sneakers. And in the United States, this is a whole sub-economy, people that buy and sell unique or rare sneakers. Tell me more about what you did there.
Yeah, the technology behind it. I mean, I gave sneakers as an example, but you could apply it to everything. It could be like Pokemon cards, anything that is supplied with very small batches and limited supply, where you have more people interested than the, more demand than offer. You can just use these add-to-cart bots, and basically they rely on being able to fill the forms very fast and bypass CAPTCHA, because these platforms, to protect that, they try to use technologies to make sure that everything it's a human that's engaging to get the product. So there is some fun engineering behind it that you can apply to a wide range of products. So a little bit of everything. This is just one story, which was fun, but yeah.
Well, as that story points, you're obviously an entrepreneur, and that'll be more clear as we continue here talking. But before we talk more about that, I want to ask you a question about France. And I always like to ask guests that are joining me from different parts of the world if they can just share what the attitudes and opinions of the people in their hometown are towards crypto and blockchain. So what can you share about the people of France, their attitudes or opinions towards crypto and blockchain?
Wow, that's a tough question. I'll try to answer it. So basically, France, you have to look at the way the relationship people have with their money in Western Europe, in France, against what's being done in North America, where the culture encourages you more to be an entrepreneur and engage and create a company and take risk. Well, in France, in particular, in Western Europe, the system is built in a way that doesn't incentivize you that much to build and become an entrepreneur, because you lose a lot of social welfare by doing that. And what you're being taught at school is not also engaging, like it's not like really pushing you to engage your assets in, let's say, solutions or fields that are a bit esoteric. So in my opinion, among casual people, there are a lot of people that are taking interest in crypto, but when you just get out of high school with a basic like understanding of what economical sciences are, and with like the mindset, the mind framing that you have when you're out of a French school, I think that there is a huge like fear of risk. I don't know. People are a bit more skeptical about crypto and tend to take like historically a bigger interest into other like fields like, rare metals or real estate and everything. But the shift is happening. And what is really interesting about France is that despite the system, the French system being so different at the core compared to the North American one, it's a machine. Like there's so many engineers, tier one engineers that are coming out of these French engineering schools. It's really France is really like for training like some amazing engineers. The method, how sciences are being taught, quality of education is, I think, like quite good. So there is a huge ecosystem of builders that are building, and I think that if you just like take a high level view of the DeFi space and see who's a French builder, even though sometimes they're not based in France anymore, you would find a lot of people coming from there. So interesting. I think that there's a lot of skepticism, more than in other countries, Anglo-Saxon culture and everything. But people who have this, let's say, that come from this scientific side, backgroundish, they recognize the relevance of distributed systems and they engage strongly with them and they build amazing stuff. So yeah, that's what I can say about France. Skepticism still, because the culture teaches us to not take that much risk and everything. I think that plays a strong role.
Well, you bring up a point there that I've been thinking a lot about recently, and that's this idea that it's really important that when you think about Web3 and crypto and the impact that it can have in the world, that you don't always do it through your own lens. There's a worldwide community and it impacts different communities differently. And we were talking before we recorded that, you travel the world quite a bit. How important do you think it is for people to expand the lens by which they view the potential impact of crypto and Web3 in the world?
This is crazy important because depending on where you're like, existing on this planet, the relevance of crypto can switch from like, it just varies, and the meaning of crypto just varies from one place to another. So when I was in France, it wasn't that much, like there were some things happening like in the real economy using crypto, but it wasn't that much of a thing. But when I lived in Russia, you could see that there was a whole sub-economy leveraging crypto because people were more skeptical about the fiat currency that was deployed there, the ruble. But still, the country was enforcing some measures to monitor the exchanges people had and everything. Depending on where you are in the world, I think it's super important to, like the way cryptos are being seen, it just varies a lot. And it gives you so much distance, so much fuel to understand better how things are that I think that it's just key to connect with the rest of the people. I can't say I've been in Venezuela or in Ukraine. Like if you take the example of Ukraine, where $1 for hryvnia, like it lost 1,000% of its value since the crisis of the Donbass and a bit like before. I think that in these countries where remittances are key and where you cannot trust the national currency anymore, then crypto also like playing a role, which is like at another level. Like it enables people to protect themselves against some systemic failures and everything. So yeah, if you can travel, it's just huge, the value you can get from that.
So when did you first become interested in crypto then?
Oh, that was back in the days when I had that one friend, which was in since like a little bit after the Ethereum ICO, kept on shilling me and telling me like the benefits of open smart contract platforms, but I was not listening to him. And then happened the trusted setup ceremony of Zcash, like when they generated the parameters of the secret of Zcash. And I found the technology to be interesting and wanted to get engaged with mining. But back then I didn't have that much resources, and I was just like keeping a bookmark and checking it from time to time, but not really engaging concretely with cryptocurrencies. And then that's where like I really wanted to take the leap forward to go further. I had that very close friend, which was buying some stuff in some alternative internet. And I would visit him like once a week, after the weekend started. I was always like checking what these guys were up to, and they were really like I was seeing them using that, and I was just realizing that there was a whole like parallel economy existing where people could do settlements that's totally sovereign and independent from all forms of verifications. There is no Stripe, there is no like payment processors and everything, and they were managing to get concrete things that was really like running. That I had a loop in my mind, thinking about what it could potentially like the strength of the system basically, and from that moment I really started to actively look at what distributed systems are, what is Ethereum, how to build with it, who are the actors involved in the system, what were the previous attempts to propose smart contract platforms like Ardor, everything, NXT. I was just trying to get some understanding about what was going on. I didn't have that much resources, but at that point, that was mid 2017. Crypto was part of my daily life, reading, and sometimes if I would have some spare money, put it in what would match with my thesis back then, which was a bit like gross, I guess. Was not. I think I was not like getting it properly.
So you became interested in crypto early on, and over time you evolved in the space and launched GRTiQ. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. I can't speak French, but you can help.
You nailed it.
Oh, good. Appreciate that. So this is the premier resource for people that speak French to learn more about crypto. And you really have this incredible entrepreneurial story. So tell us about that experience from first impressions of crypto to launching the premier educational resource for people that speak French.
Thank you for the kind words. I guess we're very happy and thankful to the community for what GRTiQ is. It's also like thanks to them that it is what it is right now. Back in the days, in 2017, I come from a city called Toulouse. So it's like 1 million people big, a very cute city in the south of France with a lot of sun and everything. And we were going to that meetup called the Beer Coin, where we would talk about Bitcoin like twice a month. And I was just trying to connect and engage with the local community that also had an interest for crypto. It was about Bitcoin, but of course you had people coming to share their visions, even though they were interested in other technologies. And so there were only like 12 people or like 15 people for a long time. And we started to get along a lot. And all these people had like a similar background, like either they were dropouts or ex-professional poker players, you know the way and everything. So a lot of were like, cypherpunks or minarchists or, agorists. So it was really interesting to see this community blossom. And among these people, started to become friends with someone called Benoit Huguet, which I greet, Morgan Phuc, it's a Vietnamese name. And we started to get like, to become friends and see each other outside of the context of these meetings that we were organizing all together. And back then, before GRTiQ there was a blog called BitConseil, which we were running. BitConseil was a company that was specialized in providing consultancy and advisory to French Nasdaq equivalent CAC 40 companies like Casino, Capgemini, and everything, helping them to understand how they can leverage this technology to improve their functional capabilities. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And also making them custom courses that are matching with their staff so they can be up to date about distributed ledger technologies and everything like, the yada yada. And we were also writing some opinion papers about the threat of like CBDCs, for instance, and what could be the implications of that. Some very long papers and technical papers. We were also doing a lot of that back in 2017. And while we were building this, we came along the way with another team of amazing people, Romain and Luca, which were starting that blog, which was rather small, called GRTiQ back then. And we merged together both companies. That's how it all happened. And this new structure, the fusion between BitConseil and GRTiQ just remained GRTiQ, which is a website which targets a broader audience, providing people with a genuine interpretation of what's going on in the crypto space, but also some research papers and technical profiles about protocols that we find interesting. So you can just like explore GRTiQ and find something about indexation on the graph, or what is modularity and what is the system behind Celestia, what are fraud proofs or data availability proof, and also some dev-oriented resources. And so over time, over the years, with all these founders, the company grew from just involving 6 people to now 40. And serving, I would say, about more than 2 million sessions a month. So we are very thankful to the community and very impressed with the results. And that's pretty much what happened. It was the story that spans on 5 years, going through the bear and eating glasses, as someone likes to say in another community. Yeah.
You have a very unique life experience because not a lot of people have the opportunity to start something that's relatively small with 6 people, and then all suddenly it becomes GRTiQ, and you've got millions of users, millions of subscribers. What was that experience like scaling something like that?
6 people. There's something interesting that I need to share with you guys. So we were 6, 5, not even 5, and back then I was like following my studies, and I didn't really enjoy them much at that 3rd year. And I told myself, Sam, you're gonna take 1 year off and do your very best to make a reasonable income, so you can really like pursue something that you truly like without compromising your existence by having no income. And since I was in med school, I had access to amazing borrowing capabilities because the bank was betting on the fact that I would just finish the years that were remaining. And so I would be someone very sold that would be able to repay a large debt. The thing is that I was like, wait, so they're offering me some great credit with fixed interest rate that's extremely low that I could potentially use for the purpose that, I for whatever I want. But I should not say that it's for crypto, otherwise they would decline it. So I can just say it's for increasing my living standards or traveling to, I don't know, God knows where, Singapore. And, the hotels can be expensive there. And my banker was a good pal because we were playing some video games together. I mean, so I just filed the borrowing paper, and I took 25K, which is huge in France because tuition is free. So 25K is like a huge amount of money. In the US, like it would be like 200K would be probably normal because it can just it pays your master's in Harvard or something like that, or like probably 3 years. And so I took that money and put it all in crypto. And I was like, at least I have something to have pure stake in what I truly believe to be relevant. And then I told myself, Sam, you have 1 year to bootstrap and build this journal with the founders and make an income out of it in an ethical way, which is also something that's extremely hard to achieve when, markets are not so nice. And after that 1 year, I was fortunate enough to kind of make a living out of that. And seeing all of this growing, I've lost all my hair. I'm 25. So it's been a lot of fun. But if I have to be honest, it was great. A very rewarding experience, I guess. But myself, with my temper and how much I try to involve myself with it. I mean, I don't take days off because I'm like playing a video game when I'm like working. Every day I wake up and it's like I'm grinding on StarCraft and I'm just trying to develop this company. So since I don't have a proper limit between my private life and professional life, it took a toll on me a little bit. But it's been amazing. It's been amazing, and because we've been at some levels, it was so bad, like. The media is very hard to maintain, was not generating any income. So we were like, the corporation itself was in debt. We could make some money through very bad ways because there were always some propositions that, you could milk your people and just like show them something that's awful. And we really had to try hard and think deep on how to get out of this quagmire. But we had some competitors coming up that are amazing. And some were really like threatening to overtake the market, but we always managed to find a way to, survive and do things a bit like in our own way. And then like, of course, markets became more abundant. Things were a bit different, but the whole like process, the growth, it's been a very moving experience, but very exhausting.
The GRTiQ podcast is made possible by a generous grant from the Graph Foundation. The Graph Grants program provides support for protocol infrastructure, tooling, dApps, subgraphs, and community building efforts. Learn more at thegraph.foundation. That's thegraph.foundation.
Hi, this is GRTiQ. The Graph recently announced the launch of the Graph Advocates, a new initiative designed to be a portal into Web3 for anyone passionate about getting more involved, regardless of their background, technical skill, or where they live in the world. Advocates will get to choose from 6 different advocate role types, each of which can be tailored to match their unique background, interests, and abilities, ranging from creating content, translating materials, or hosting events. With Graph Advocates, the path into Web3 has never been more open to anyone with the conviction to make a contribution and help build Web3. You can find more information about how to apply to become a Graph Advocate in the show notes or by visiting thegraph.com. Thanks for listening. You can't have a life experience like that and not learn some lessons. And like I said, not everybody will have the opportunity to have that experience. So what are maybe the one or two lessons that you learned in taking something from 6 to millions of users? What are some lessons?
Well, what are the lessons? When you build this kind of business, it leverages subsets of skills from so many different domains. From the optimization of the loading time of your page, so the Google algorithm ranks you better because there is, for instance, a new update that puts priority on that criteria, to how you're going to process content in a way that's compelling and attractive to the persona that would use your website, to who you're going to side with and how you're going to build strong bonds and connections with the best foundations and protocols that exist out there. So how do you draft your thesis? How do you choose people you want to partner with? How do you build bonds with them and show yourself as an entity that could be valuable for them? How to understand their needs and create a proposition of value that makes sense to them? So you learn about bartering. You learn about writing in a way that is not only flattering, like pleasant to you, but pleasant to the potential people that would stumble on your, on your content. So it's really about so many things. I'm sorry for not making a simple answer, but the lessons that it teaches you is that don't think just for yourself. Try to design things that are intelligible, making sense for a broad audience. That's a challenge. And don't neglect the, let's say, I would call them the backstage aspects, the engineering, having a good tech stack, and try to really be like skin in the game in anything you do, and try to remove intermediaries. Don't always rely on agencies to optimize your semantics or search engine optimization. Try to retro-engineer it and understand how it works, because this is the only way you're going to be more cost efficient and you're going to achieve greater results, and you will have a better judgment. And always try to seek for people, especially in North America where like everything's happening. Try to find like reference points or people that are doing it just better, and see how you can take some elements from what they do and incorporate it in what you do to create something that's truly genuine, but that's better. And always have these role models and chase them.
Thanks for sharing that. I found it very insightful, and I appreciate that you would share those lessons. I want to ask you this question about this unique perspective you've had then. So launching in 2017, growing your user base, you've also been able to watch the crypto space itself evolve. What's changed in crypto or in Web3 since you founded Journal.coin to present?
What has changed? Well, I'm going to give a very generic answer to this. First of all, the maturity. Remember the ICO boom and how many, like, you could just like raise 20 million by making some kind of IoT force, so you could create some shoe that's connected to the IOTA blockchain and just raise 15 million because this is just going to like revolutionize everyone's life. And the stuff that were just based on very out of thin air were collecting a lot of capital. But the tech stack behind, first of all, was much poorer than today in terms of templates, in terms of infrastructure and everything. So a lot of projects didn't ship, a lot of promises, smart contract platforms. There was nothing. Back then you had Ethereum, you had Ardor, and you had EOS from Dan Larimer before he met BChares. And yeah, you had the beginnings, the humble beginnings of DPoS with Tezos also back then in 2018. And that sounded like the new stuff because it could handle thousands of transactions. But like, you didn't have that much choice to build and not that many users. Like, let's just face it. Remember the price of gas back then? And a lot of people were just, I guess, exploiting this opportunistic economy because it was just a new vehicle to raise funds. So it's easy to make an interface with a Web3 injection to get money from people without KYC. But it was just all about that. And then when the bear happened and some relevant companies were still sustaining and trying to build great stuff, We can think, for instance, of Gnosis or other well-respected Ethereum companies. Then you start to see people really leveraging what Ethereum as an open computer could offer, and tools were being sharpened. You could attend to these conferences like the Berlin meetups of Ethereum, the THCC in France Ethereum conference. That is also an event I have a lot of that I really love. That I greet the organizers of it. You could see all the builders coming together. Chainlink back then was also like, you didn't have Oracle, the centralized Oracle. All that stack came after. And this is basically that stack that enables you to make complex protocols, that enables people to make DeFi applications. And I think that this whole structure that was being built is what makes me think that today cryptos are really here to stay, and they're so strong purpose-wise. Like now it's happening. And outside of Ethereum, if you broaden your scope, there are some amazing technologies that are seeing the day. Let's just take the example of zero knowledge proofs finally being leveraged. Like, you have a concrete use of zero knowledge proofs to scale a system. Like these things comes from, like, I don't know, 82, 84, like Mikkeli and Shafi Goldwasser just put some paper. And it's only 40 years after that you have people that are actually making a market ready application out of it. Isn't that beautiful? And you see that in crypto, the best of game theory and low-level mathematics being blended into stuff that has purpose and increases, like, the finance stack, or like the life of everyone, or the way they can exchange informations. That's like moving. It's so major now. I mean, it's so major. It looks like it's here to stay. And look at the people involved in that space. It's like gigabrains everywhere. And it's mental.
How has the users, the subscribers to Journal de Coin, how has that changed over the years?
I guess global awareness increased. A lot of people have PTSD from 2017 and 2018 being rocked by projects that promised them, like, sun and moon, and just offered them some tokens that went where they came from to zero. And this PTSD, I guess, increased global awareness. So people were learning to be more cautious, but still in people's mind, the greed, or like the constant search of opportunities, or, it's all about what's in it for me. Finance is about making money with money. And you can change that very easily. People are just still looking actively for something that's a lazy way to fructify, develop their capital. And this is still here, but people are employing methods and approaches to achieve that. They have a judgment, a sight that has been evolving. And so now you have more, I guess people are more cautious when they engage with protocol or solution that's promising them some quick income. And from the dev side, there are much more devs. And they are becoming even more, I guess they have a sharper judgment on choosing with what they will build and where they will build. And this is also very interesting. Now you really have the choice of your weapons if you want to build like an applications and everything. And so, yeah, I guess everyone is more of a connoisseur now. But still, it's all about, in general, as someone who sees the media from, behind the curtain, what drives people is, most of the time and a lot of time, it's making money with money. And it's most of people get in for the opportunity of making money. Eventually they lose some, and then virtue comes and they stay because they took a deeper interest about the technology they invested on. And then they realize that it's actually pretty fascinating. Why should I even sell? Then I guess I'm just gonna at least leverage that knowledge and dig deeper. And that's eventually how great stories are being made. But there is no shame, I think, of entering this space, seeing an economical opportunity at first. Let's just face it. It's the case probably of 95% of the people. But what makes you stay is what really matters. You have to see the large picture, the broad picture.
Well, I appreciate you making that point. And I think it's such an important point, because I feel like there needs to be an evolution in the people participating in crypto and Web3 away from this speculation focused and more to an appreciation for the technology. And so how do people do that? What's the migration path for people to better appreciate that, in your opinion?
You're asking me how people end up appreciating better the technology that's behind crypto. That's what I call a good lesson. I think that when you lose big, you might eventually reach that point where all that is left is the lesson you've learned, and eventually some links that could help you figure out why you've lost money and what was the right way to do things, or just understand how cycles or maybe markets do function. And by following this path, you eventually start to build a genuine interest for the technology that's behind it. Or you're someone who's really into game theory and understand mathematics, or I don't know, like state replication and what makes, like, I don't know, Tendermint's consensus engine so good or whatever. And then you just have fascination for the mathematics behind it. And then it's just obvious from the moment you start using, I don't know, Cosmos SDK, you start just to see what can be done with such a tech stack or substrate. And then you just fall in love with it. But if you come from, let's say, a non-tech background, I think the number one way is just to get wrecked. Like, yeah, take a good lesson, have a good PTSD, have some free time, think over what happened, and eventually you'll just stumble upon a paper that's gonna make your life different. Or you'll just have that friend if you just decide to stick a little bit longer, you'll have that friend who made it that might inspire you, or you have that friend who's buying stuff on the parallel web, and it's just like, it's bugging you. How is that happening? I don't know. And then interest comes up. But it's all about, I think the number one reason is just getting wrecked. It's one way to stick, or just being a scientist that truly understand the tech behind it. When you start playing with all these tools and you see the roadmaps of these projects, like IBC back in 2018, when it was just like on the roadmap, when you see what it enables, how it works, I think you want to stay.
For listeners that want to learn more about Journal de Coin, maybe subscribe and see some of the content you're producing, what's the best way for them to learn more?
So I guess that people who are listening to us are probably speaking English. So on the website, unfortunately for now, you can only find content that's in English, but there is a YouTube channel and an audios channel on which you can find 2 playlists that are made out of English podcasts. So I record the podcast in English and the team subtitles them in French. So you can find the playlist Entrevue with podcasts with builders from, I don't know, for instance, Yaniv Tal or Tegan Klein, or more recently Mustafa from Celestia, or people from Starkware, Eli Ben Sasson. And you have one called Grands Investisseurs, Traders et Penseurs, which is one that's where you have people that are more behind like funds, structures, medias, for instance, Larry Cermak from The Block or Kyle from Multicoin. And in these, they share their perspective on the market, what were their biggest mistakes, what they are, let's say, most proud of, what are their insights or what they think of the current state of, blockchain technology. And these 2 playlists, maybe you'll find them relevant, and it's in English. So if you could, if you want to check it out, I'm more than happy to have you as to increase the viewer stats from North America, UK, or wherever you come from. That's probably going to be relevant. But there's more stuff coming in English.
And for listeners that are interested, I'll put links to these resources in the show notes, so be sure to visit the show notes. Sam, another reason we're talking today not only was to hear about this incredible story about Journal de Coin and all the things you learned along the way there, but you recently launched a new project called Node Guardians, and I have a lot of interest in this, and I think a lot of listeners will as well. What can you tell us about Node Guardians?
So I'll put some context. So Node Guardians is not a play to earn. It's not an. It's just the logical continued, suite of what we've been doing with Journal du Coin. So when I was struggling to make Journal du Coin with my team a sustainable, let's call it a business, not a charity, I was looking for ways to make money while still enjoying my work. So not talking about stuff that is not interesting just because there is some paycheck to get at the end, like here's $2,000 and make a PR. So I was like, is there a way that we could make income while speaking about stuff that's truly nice to us, so people are really inspired to do the job, and the job is actually nice. So I started to look at foundations and grant programs of protocols that I like, and try to understand, engineer, see how we can be relevant to these protocols, while initially not having that many developers, because foundations usually support initiatives that help them federate more devs, or that build tools to make their platforms more used or easier to use, or create an Oracle system and everything. And so I was applying for various grants, explore different ways to bring value to those projects. I was looking also at emerging protocols with strong value propositions in which we could participate early. And by interacting with all these projects, it allowed me basically to have a better understanding of what infrastructure protocols and layer 1 platforms need most. And whether it was for layer 1 or layer 2 or other systems, we were going through these grants, sometimes being rejected, but over time starting to really figure out what was truly in need. And we started specializing ourselves into making our craft like signature content that, since GRTiQ is not about copying what's in English and deploying it or Google translating it and making it to French, we started like making tech writing and also resources that break down complex technologies and make them intelligible for a larger audience. And this recipe was bringing great results. As French people tend to prefer having their content in French, even though sometimes they're great developers, we started to have like these articles being seen by dozens of thousands of people and having developers sometimes discovering protocols through these articles and through these videos. And from that moment, I was like, oh, this is just pretty crazy. Now we are making this media afloat through grants by speaking about stuff that's really badass for us. And we enjoy it, and we more or less understand how it works. And we started to see that the demand for tech writing, but also stuff that breaks down this technology, makes them more understandable, was just huge. And we were not it was just not enough. Like we could not answer it. We were like providing one, and the request was 10. And also there was another need. Foundations and protocols are always looking for highly available infrastructure and initiatives that involve more participants in securing distributed networks. And at that moment, I was like, maybe we could just do non-custodial staking differently and create a tool that enables us, that makes it easy for protocols to distribute technical tasks. So non-custodial staking providers, sometimes they don't have community. And if you have a lot of money, you can have a great tech stack. I guess you can just hire half of MIT and make them do DevOps, and that's it. You have a great tech stack, and they do MPC for your nodes and everything. That's wonderful. But community is harder to grind. Even if you have money, having millions of enthusiasts that share the same vision, that's hard to build. It's not that easy. It's like, what if I make a new non-custodial staking experience with a layer of incentive? I'll get to that later, in which we focus on educating our community of millions of users to the implications of securing POS networks. We don't prescribe them anything, but we just educate them. And we make a new thing that's in English so we can target a broader audience. And on top of that, we can create a matching engine. So you have the staking part, and we also explain you how to bootstrap a node, because we're here to make networks more decentralized, not just teach people one way to delegate on one node. And then we create another tool, which is a matching engine between developers and layer ones, or like protocols. The protocol can just log in a backend, create a new block in some kind of technological tree, put specifications of what they need. I need a 20-page guide on how to use Anchor framework on Solana, or how to set up a subnet on Avalanche. Here are the specs that I need, the profile I'm looking for the most. Here is the economical incentives, because this is very important. And then they can just receive applications from people from our own team, but also people from all around the world. And they can choose among the applicants who matches best with the job and give them the quests. And people have a certain amount of time to deliver back something. And if it's good, payment is triggered. And if it's not good, it needs adjustments. There is a dispute process, and then it's adjusted until consensus is found on the quality of what has been delivered, and payment is triggered. And there is a reputation system. And so this way we can leverage people from emerging countries. I was living in Russia and spent a lot of time in Eastern Europe, and I noticed that there is a huge potential there. Like you go to, I don't know, Moscow Technical University or Kiev, there are a lot of developers that would be more than happy to create a template for an IMM and that's easy for them. Like you have PhD in like low-level programmation or machine learning. They can like make these tutorials, because it's something that's in their range, and they'll be more than happy to take part in that effort. So why just relying on our own team when we can onboard all these talented people from our network and beyond our network through an open system that allows people to match with foundations and make some money while creating the documentation that they need. So I wanted to create the ultimate tool for protocols to distribute a lot of technical tasks. And later, initially it's just for tech writing, it could also be applied for, not only articles or documentation, but also, build a bridge between Polygon and Mina and put the task and select like a team that looks like they can take the challenge, and you can give them the long-term mission. So the idea is to create a new way, a new non-custodial staking provider that's community-oriented, and a matching engine to that's for tech writing. And it's important, decentralization this way, because non-custodial staking, if you run nodes and you just handle the stake from like 5 hedge funds, that's not really decentralization. But if you make a node and you have thousands of participants delegating on your node with small, medium, and large stacks, that's more interesting. And I think that the idea is just not to be in competition with everyone, but just to make sure that people like take interest about how networks are being secured, take their tokens out of the exchange, and really start to do things with them just like securing the network, but also use DeFi. The initiative is just like augmenting global knowledge while also making a sustainable business. Because I have to be very transparent. We're not a charity, but we're looking at making money in a super ethical way while speaking about stuff that we truly like, while not like harming anyone. This is what it's all about. And it's all about trying to solve this equation. And we're trying to do that. And just the follow up of what GRTiQ does, but this time for a broader audience.
I appreciate that overview. It's very helpful. So for listeners that want to engage or get more involved with Node Guardians, what's the best path to do it? And who are you looking for? Who would you like to get more involved with Node Guardians?
Oh, how to engage, how to get involved with Node Guardians. So we are actively working on finishing like the blueprints and the documentation and our some elements that I wanted to sharpen and our ambassador program. So anyone who wants to get involved, who is an illustrator or a cloud architect or someone who thinks he can bring value to the design of such a platform is more than welcome to reach out to me by email or on Twitter. I try to check all DMs. And later there will be a proper portal and a proper structure to engage and build with us on Node Guardians. So you should expect some proper guidelines and elements, about that coming up next month, I hope. But anyone with good intention, just DM me and let's see what we can work together on. Even you don't have to be tech savvy, If you make like some great artwork, just reach out to us. If you like community management, it's really like something you're great at. I'm always excited to have you on board, guys, and see how we can work together.
Hi, this is Sami Ben-Jacob, co-founder of GRTiQ and Node Guardians. If my conversation with the GRTiQ podcast has been helpful to you, then please consider supporting future episodes by becoming a subscriber. Visit grtiq.com/podcast for more information. That's grtiq.com/podcast.
GRTiQ
Podcast.
Thanks for listening.
I want to now shift a little bit to the graph. And as listeners know, a lot of this podcast is about focusing and shining a light on the work that the graph is doing in the context of Web3. I'd love to get your perspective on the graph. Do you remember when you first became aware of the graph and what your initial impressions were?
I think the first thing I stumbled upon was this Berlin Ethereum meetup with Billy Rennekamp, Yaniv Tal, explaining what the graph could potentially offer to DApp builders. And I just took a look at it, and I think that I found it very interesting. And when I find someone that's interesting, I start to a bit stalk about what this person does and what other podcast is featured. I think I heard the Epicenter podcast from Brian Crane, also featuring Yaniv Tal. And I think this was, I found it very interesting that you could have a solution where you don't have to run your own archive node anymore and your own indexation scripts. And that could just like make the development of dApps much faster. So I found it interesting, I think in 2019, early 2020, but then I forgot about it. That's it. I forgot about it. And then I rediscovered it because there was a lot of fuss, a lot of noise. I think they announced during the summer, there was some echoes about like the sale of the graph. And then I started to dive back into it. And back in the DeFi summer, I was also in touch with a lot of developers, and they were really like explaining me what this could potentially enable them to do. And I started to take like a deeper dive in the technology, and that's how I fell in love with it. And I wanted to bring value to this project and see how I can get involved in its success. So my first move was to invite in September 2020 or October 2020 Yaniv to give us a high-level understanding of what the graph is. And the podcast is available in the channel, so you can check it out. It was not that great, I think, but I progressively started to dive into the graph first. That's it. And there was a big challenge back then, making this technology understood by everyone. And I can tell you that back in the days, the analogies calling it the Google of blockchains were not a thing. Who would damn care about an indexation protocol like from the mainstream side? I mean, developers knew what was up, but the rest, it was just the blue token, and that's it.
So going back to what we talked about earlier of this initial impression related to speculation and the coin and this move to the underlying technology and impact, how has your opinion or perspective of the graph evolved in terms of the technology and the importance it has for Web3?
crazy it was just about the blue coin. And then you start reading the papers about how Brandon Ramirez planned a while ago to make this thing that was existing on a centralized stack, to make it mutate into a fully fledged decentralized network that is sustainable, with interactions between buyers and sellers and actors involved in the network that makes sense and could fuel it over the years to come. I mean, you still have to take time reading some. I mean, when you read the papers of the graph, not being tech savvy, it's not that easy sometimes to figure out what this is all about. But if you take a deep dive, you really like reset your RAM and you start to absorb what it is all about and how it's being built. And it's just not only that blue token. And you see that there are other protocols that have similar ambitions and that could potentially like make developer experience so much better. I think it's hard not to fall in love with what the graph does. And I think that, yeah, the result is here now. I mean, there is no indexation solution that's spread across multiple chains. Even though it's on Ethereum mainnet, it's like fully decentralized, but it's also like being deployed on other networks. I think at Cosmoverse, Figment announced that they're working on making it available on Cosmos. It's coming everywhere. Near protocol, IPFS, it's there. And it's decentralized on Ethereum. I mean, like the competition is I think not close to that stage. I mean, what has been achieved is huge. And how well it fastens up like the development of applications is just crazy. So yeah, to me the initiative, like the tech is just impressive. It's more than the blue token I was describing, but you need to really like stick to that paper and read how it's being built, and that takes time. Attention times and attention spans are super short nowadays. God, you really have to stick to it.
How important do you think the graph is for Web3?
It is key because from a business manager perspective, you want your people to be able to build fast, to reduce the cost of building a protocol X, Y, or Z, because you have limited capital most of the time to build something that generally tends to be most ambitious. And if you have a solution that spares you from running expensive infrastructure and maintaining code to extract the data, and you can just like subscribe to a subgraph and get what you need and do things much faster, and you don't have to rely on a team that is able to make archive nodes and scripts and everything. You're just saving cost of labor, super expensive labor, and you're just making the work experience much more seamless. Initiatives like that, they're key, because our only chance to get these Web2 developers to come on Web3 is to have an onboarding and a dev experience it's not a scripted answer. Like, I think it's really like, it's just obvious. The more stuff we have like this, the more we're going to win it. And it's important because right now there's probably like 200 million users using who have a crypto wallet. To move from 200 million to 2 billion, we're going to need a super strong stack and infrastructure and tooling, because people are still going to stick to what they're comfortable with. So the graph plays a key role at making building on blockchains like an economically relevant experience and an enjoyable experience. If we don't have that fast enough, we're going to have problems.
I want to ask you about Web3. Web3 there's a lot of chatter online about what even Web3 means. How do you think about the definition of Web3?
I don't like that Web3 term. It's like a lazy way to qualify something that's about crypto. And when you don't know what to fill your sentence, you just say like a Web3 thing. Yeah, we're gonna make the Web3 better. Yeah, or lack of having a word that's more context specific, just say Web3 and you throw it at people like that. But from what I understand, my humble understanding, I still like the term. It's a good shortcut. But it's all about, you have read, write, and ownership. And ownership is what I care most about. And deletion of intermediaries. Being sovereign. With your data, there is like DID solutions coming, data availability solutions like Ceramic Network. Like there is like this whole way of exchanging, communicating while retaining data and only offering it to people you sign for, you agree to share your data with, but also being able to transact without having an entity that can censor your transaction. So without relying on proprietary systems that could eventually block you from doing what you truly want. And Web3 is just what enables, is the extension of freedom in the digital world, but genuine freedom. This is what matters to me, and this is what is all. This is what matters at the end of the day, in my opinion. And what I seek personally, using crypto, is also feeling more sovereign. And so I think Web3 is just like the incarnation of that. in a digital packaging. It's just all the tools, all that crypto enables. You can, I guess, you can call it Web3, removing intermediaries and being somewhat like some kind of enjoying some kind of freedom while roaming on the internet, communicating and sending packets here and there.
Well, I agree with you about the term Web3. It's been misused and it's been used as clickbait. I think it's a huge risk to those that want to build Web3 that we need to define and protect it. But absent of that, how do you think Web3 impacts the world? What's the positive benefit to people all throughout the world?
Well, if Web3 is widely adopted, then we have a world that gets closer to from heaven. Like it's more ideal. It's more like of a utopia. But let's be a bit more pragmatic. Web3 solutions at the core with what they enable people to do, will they really be like composing like the essential of internet traffic? I still think that there's gonna be some proprietary gate. But if we still have the option to use some protocols that work on Web3 and that really respect our freedom, I think that we're up to something huge. And Web3 is just the gateway for people who live in miserable conditions to actually do things that are vital on the internet. So let's say you're in a country that's isolated from SWIFT networks and SEPA if you're in Europe and you want to send value. It's good that you can access the internet and eventually use alternative systems that do not require you to use KYC to receive and send value and that protect your identity. It's also nice that in the future also we can be the sovereign owners of our medical data and we can choose to use like healthy applications that do not make money off selling our data to third parties or NASDAQ companies, but we can really decide to share or pay for a service if we don't want to share our data. And if it gets just at this level of adoption, this is just going to be amazing. And I take a deep interest in privacy technologies. So whether it is with zero knowledge systems and what they promise, like Aztec with Planck, or just Monero as a transaction layer, a primitive payment layer, but also NIM as a Tor with steroids. I think that this is what is really interesting. But I still have a fear that we're going to get nagged very bad by trying to make this technology mainstream. Because state, by definition, have tendency, a will to still keep control over the informations that are being exchanged. And a pure breed Web3 being fully available to everyone, oh dear, I would bet you that in 2 years, you won't be able to have more than $10K in stablecoins without having to fill up a KYC. Let's take that bet. Is that really Web3, transacting using USDC if you have to provide some elements to broadcast a transaction? We'll see how it evolves. But broad Web3 like concept is great on the paper, and I can only wish for it to become true. Is it really going to happen?
Sam, you're a brilliant guy. I really appreciate your time. And I want to make this last question something from the perspective of advice. So you started off in crypto with just an interest in crypto, and you eventually grew it into a full-time job. And you're obviously a technical guy. You understand a lot of different terms, a lot of different really technical concepts related to crypto and Web3. What's your advice to listeners that say, gee, I don't know a lot and I want to get more involved? What's the path that they should take?
Oh, that's a tough one. You're going to have to still like find a lot of passion for this field, but you can make it, and you can make it without capital, actually. Try to get involved with projects that really resonate within you, that you find really interesting. You can just be someone who's into visual arts or who's into copywriting or who's into making logos. I don't know. Just try to find vulnerabilities in protocols that you really like, or just try to bring value without expecting anything at the end. Try to just allocate 2 hours of your time in the week, because you probably have a work, and that's not easy to put like 2-3 days like crazy and just work on like in crypto, and try to get involved and try to just allocate some bits of your time and get involved with these protocols. If you see that it doesn't work out, in the meantime, always try to see what the kingmakers of the market and this whole space are saying, and just try to see if your thesis if your prism gives you like it has some similarities with what the great thinkers are thinking. And if you see that there's some correlation, you're probably doing it right. If you're supporting a project that's into, I don't know, data availability, I'm giving just an example, and it seems to be something that's in huge need, or sharding in huge need, like in the era that we're going through, just keep on that path, but always reassess your position. And the best thing you can invest is your time, and it also requires some passion. But my advice is that just allocate a little bit of your time, find people who share the same interests as you, and confront your vision and try to get involved at an early stage with protocols. Find the black horses. You're probably gonna stumble, fail a few times, but at some point it's gonna pay off. And when it's gonna pay off, you're gonna move from one paradigm to another, and that's where the enlightenment probably starts. Your time is your best resources, and it's not about your cash. So wherever you come from, whether you have like, a Berkeley computer science degree or nothing, you have your chance. But you have to have a little bit of passion, and you need to try hard, and always keep yourself up to date with what the thinkers are thinking, and see if you're parallel with them, like in the way you think.
That's great advice, Sam. Thank you so much for your time. You've been so generous. If listeners want to learn more about you or follow your work, what's the best way for them to stay in touch?
You can reach out to me at Sami, SAMI, @journalducoin.com if you want to send a more formal email. Otherwise, I should post a lot on Twitter, but I do it in French 50% of the time and 50% of the time in English, and I plan to do it more in English. My name is Sam on Twitter. You're probably not going to find the results, so you need to use the proper page name. It's Sam_JDC, Sam JDC. You can also DM me there if you want to chat or speak about Node Guardians. I'm super curious and really willing to have more people from the North American scene to engage with us and also to just have a chat. So you can engage with me there, and feel free to check out our channel, Journal du Coin, where you'll find some podcasts in English that eventually might be relevant to you, or you can find them on Audius in an audio-only format. And soon, Node Guardians. If you're a dev, you'll be able to find some resources that are relevant to you, but also some streams and podcasts that are more focused on the technical side. So feel free to hop by, and I'm super thankful that for this podcast. To me, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
This has been a production of the GRTiQ podcast. For more information, including detailed show notes, visit grtiq.com/podcast. That's grtiq.com/podcast.
Please consider contributing to this project and helping build the community by subscribing and leaving a review. GRTiQ Podcast.